Great to welcome back to the microphones Dr. Alex L. Carmen, Associate Dean and Professor, School of Criminology, Criminal Justice and Public Administration at Tarleton State University, member of the Texas A&M University system in Fort Worth. And, Doctor, it's great to have you back on the radio. I'm really reading an interesting story here concerning what is going on as far as auto thefts soaring, just going off the chart. Due to the chip shortage in vehicles out there. You know, and I think this really does bring up a very interesting story that a lot of people need to be aware of, that we are looking at some of these vehicles that are becoming very popular with automobile thieves that are out there. Big story. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Nice to join you again. It's great to have you back on the radio to talk about this. And, you know, we're looking at a story in some of the Dallas-Fort Worth area media that police say that auto thefts are soaring amid the chip shortage in vehicles. But I would imagine this is also going to be extended to other cities as well. What is going on with this? Are we seeing more vehicles that are being stolen? I would imagine trucks, pickup trucks are going to be the same way, that the thieves, the bad guys, want those chips. They want those parts. What do you see?
Yeah, so, you know, I think that a lot of things happen, you know, with the pandemic, as you know, and many of the dynamics, including those related to crime, have actually changed nationwide. One of the things that we've seen that, you know, there's a shortage of vehicles. There is a shortage of new vehicles in particular. And so used cars have become the element of desire of not only consumers but also criminals. And so what we're seeing across the United States really for the past year and a half is an increase that is of dramatic consequence, you know, of stolen parts and stolen vehicles, right? And primarily they use the parts in order to sell them and in order to distribute them in the black market because there's such a shortage of pretty much everything in the market today. So it is a crime of opportunity, but also a crime that we criminologists would associate with the pandemic.
When you take that a step further, too, you look at some of the circumstances surrounding how these vehicles are disappearing. I would think probably one of the first impressions for many, well, it's just going to be a problem with maybe automobiles. Does this extend also into the pickup truck market as well? Same thing maybe going on there.
Yeah, so I think what we see across the United States that there are certain vehicles that criminals have found that it is easier to steal versus others, right? And remember that the criminal element is looking at a vehicle as a crime of opportunity, but also they're trying to minimize their exposure. They're trying to limit the amount of time that it will take them to steal it. And thirdly, they're going to try to make sure that whatever they steal is going to be sellable in the market. And so all those three factors will affect that criminal mind in trying to identify some of those vehicles. To your question, to your point, many of them include, in particular, American-made pickup trucks that they can simply pick off, you know, very quickly and be able to sell parts across the United States without much of a tracing element.
Well, how does that work? In other words, say that I've got a GMC pickup and say it's maybe a 2017 and then it's gone. Say it's just out of there for whatever reason, wherever it's parked out there. And is that going to be the end of the story? How does the thief, if you will, the criminal, take that truck or take that car? Do they go into, say, maybe a place where the car or the vehicle can be disassembled? What do they do with the parts? How do those parts get back into circulation where they're going to be picked up into the black market? How does that process work from point A to 2 to point 3 and maybe to point D?
So it actually varies, right, by region of the country and the criminal element. There's not one prescribed way that they would actually steal the vehicle parts and then sell them. But what we have seen across the U.S. in terms of a normative behavior is that they will typically steal the car. If they don't commit a crime while using the car and abandoning it somewhere else, they're going to take the car and take it to a garage, take it to the countryside, disassemble it, and they already know the value of each one of the parts of the vehicle. They know which are the ones that are, sought after the most versus others. We've seen these chips now that, oftentimes we now rely on technology for a lot of these vehicles. Well, there's a shortage of chips. And so by virtue of that, they know that those chips, they can resell high volume, high-end chips on the internet. They can also sell it in pawn shops. They can go somewhere and sell them. So my point is that they will disassemble it, and they already know which parts are going to be the ones sought after the most, and they're going to know which parts are going to give them the highest return, and they're going to expose them the least. And that's how they're going to engage them.
This has got to be, I think, would imagine setting off alarm bells inside of police departments around the United States. And I'm reading a story here, vehicle theft skyrocketing 93%, driving New York's crime surge in 2022. Colorado, I should say, sees all-time high for automobile theft, up 82% since 2019. When you talk with the folks that you know in law enforcement, what are they doing to maybe combat this? I would think that there's got to be task forces that are being formed, looking at the number of possibilities, like you mentioned, maybe organized crime. Is that playing a role in some of these numbers?
Yeah, and I think that you're going to see that organized crime does have a role, and whether they have a role on the front end of the actual theft or the back end when it comes to distributing the parts and even consuming them or buying them and then selling them somewhere else. Look, this is an international market, right? So when you start thinking about it in terms of the global component, who is to say that a vehicle part that is sold in the United States cannot be sold in Mexico or other parts of Latin America or even in Europe? And so at the end of the day, that's what organized crime is going to try to maximize the volume of profit by virtue of the fact that, hey, they've got 1,500 vehicles that they're going to target, and those 1,500 cars are going to produce X number of parts, and those X number of parts can be sold in Latin America for 3 times the amount that they're sold in the United States. That's how organized crime will come into the picture, as opposed to the local criminal that finds an opportunity in that vehicle and turns around and sells them on eBay and will make some pocket change and feel like they're a millionaire overnight, until the next opportunity to steal another car comes about.
Does that set off alarms, though, for like eBay if they see like a carburetor for sale? Or Amazon, I would imagine, does that? Are there safeguards in place where some of these internet providers are going to be looking at that going, well, wait a minute, maybe we need to look a little bit further into that? Or is that kind of a wild west on the internet, if you will?
Well, I mean, I think in theory, they say that they do have those filters, that they do have those things that stand out, and they do, in fact, have personnel that work on an ongoing basis trying to identify not only fraudulent items that are being sold or things that are illegally being sold, but also, the so-called fake or not real sellers, right, that just, set up the front, use a stolen credit card, and off they go. But I will say to you that in theory, because it is harder to track than most people give it credit to. When it comes to the internet, and you've got millions of people, literally millions of people that are selling things on eBay at one given point throughout the entire world. And so how are you going to be able to distinguish the serial number of a part that is being sold out of New York that may be stolen versus a part that's being sold legitimately by someone who is trying to get rid of parts of a vehicle that they dismantled so that they can actually have enough money to feed their family? So, very hard. Very difficult for law enforcement also to track down as well.
I just got a message on Facebook. One of our listeners, Randy, says, well, does that mean, doctor, that if a vehicle is stolen, that's the end of it? Once it's gone, it's gone. Truth in that, or is there a pretty good recovery rate for these vehicles that are picked off like that?
Yeah, I hate to sound like a college professor when I answer that, but I'll say that it depends on the jurisdiction the type of vehicle that was stolen and the type of resources that law enforcement has, right?
Yeah.
But I will tell you that law enforcement has only a limited capacity as to how they can recover.
Yeah, I would imagine there's also probably a lot of shared collective data between agencies, right? I mean, do you find that many law enforcement agencies will talk with each other? They will share data if there's maybe a similar pattern going on. Say, I'm going to use Dallas as an example. We're both in the North Texas area. Would Dallas, Fort Worth, maybe law enforcement share data with New York or maybe Los Angeles, for example, collaborative efforts maybe with this?
Yeah, when they're tied into a more serious crime, they do. For instance, if you have a kidnapping, for instance, that crosses the border, and and the individual is in a stolen vehicle, typically law enforcement would share license plate number, serial number of the car or VIN number, and various other components. But typically on a local burglary of a motor vehicle, as we call it in law enforcement, which is the theft of a car or the theft from a car, not really, right? And so unless it involves a more serious crime, you got to remember too that law enforcement in general, not only in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and in the state of Texas, but throughout the entire United States, are incredibly busy. They have only limited resources, and so I would argue that if my car were stolen today, the chances of recovering that vehicle are going to be marginal at best, right? Given all the circumstances that would provoke somebody to sell parts to it.
Dr. Del Carmen, again, thank you very much for joining me on the show. And where can listeners find you guys at Tarleton State? Website, social media, where can they reach out?
So they can find us at the www.tarleton.edu. So you just go in there and find us under Criminology, Criminal Justice. We're happy to talk to you.
All right, outstanding, sir. Again, thanks very much for doing this. We're reading, hearing about, watching more stories come up, Dr. Del Carmen, about the catalytic converters being just snapped up, taken off, gone, out of there on so many vehicles out there. Talk about that. What is the situation there? Are these products being resold onto the black market? What do drivers need to know about that?
Yeah, so what they're doing is they're actually picking up, whatever is convenient to them. What I think is important for your audience to understand is that many of these thefts that occur on vehicles or of vehicles are crimes of opportunity. What that means is that the person left their key fob inside the car, or they left the keys inside the car, they left in a hurry, or they left the car running while they were, picking something up very quickly. And by the time they got back, the car was gone, right? So it's not, this is really not for the average person that would lock their car, would park it underneath, a safe area or lights at night, and would simply have a certain lifestyle that would be conducive of not exposing the car to crime. But having said that, there are a lot of really good people that, lose their vehicles every day because they're just at the wrong time in the wrong place and with the right criminal in place. And so, but do understand that some of these crimes are related to the opportunity that the criminal has in order to be able to steal the vehicle.
Interesting point you're making there, like for the trucking industry, that many times there's going to be cases where a driver is going to be pulling in with the tractor and then the trailer and may detach that tractor and leave that trailer on that truck stop lot. And then maybe the driver's going to go back with his family, go visit with friends and things like that. They may do that on a Friday, and then by the time Sunday rolls around, that trailer's gone. I mean, it's gone. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in cargo theft that is just simply vanished. I mean, it's gone once it's out of there. So this, I think, brings up a lot of stories about awareness, knowing what are some of the best ways to protect yourself. You mentioned locking the vehicle. Don't leave the key fob inside of the vehicle out there. And is it important maybe to put on some additional anti-theft devices on a vehicle? Maybe something that will alert the driver as to where that vehicle is? GPS, does that help out at all? How do you see it?
Yeah, we now have recovery systems where, you can have a chip inside a vehicle that will alert or will wake up your app, to know whether or not the car is being driven somewhere. In this case, a trailer, as per your example. But, there are also, in criminology, and I've been a criminologist now for 25 years, and I will tell you that unequivocally, all the research suggests that the #1 crime prevention tool in the world is the light bulb, is simply light, and so if you're going to park your vehicle at night somewhere, make sure that it's well lit. Criminals are always looking for the opportunity, but they're going to go to the place of least resistance. So they're going to go to a place where they're not going to be exposed. If you've got two cars and one of them is parked underneath a light post and the other one is parked in a dark area of the neighborhood, guess which one of the cars is going to be stolen first, right? That's not to say that if you park it under a light post, your car is simply immune from theft, but you are going to reduce that likelihood of that vehicle being stolen.
Is there maybe some of the top brands that the auto thieves, truck thieves are looking for? Do they target pickup trucks? Like I'll use Ford F-150 as an example, or maybe the Chevy Silverado. Do they break it down by the brand's type of vehicle that might be a high target?
Yeah, and I've always been skeptical about that, to be honest, because those are reported criminal incidents as opposed to the criminal incidents that are taking place and people don't report. Believe it or not, most of the crime that takes place in the United States is seldom reported. Having said that, what we do know is that vehicles such as the Ford pickups, full size, they lead the way on the number of thefts in the United States. We also have the Chevy pickups, noted by your question, the Honda Civics, the Honda Accords, Toyota Camrys, I mean, you name it, right? But again, I would argue that the possibility of that theft is magnified not by the type of vehicle, but by where the car is, where it's being parked, what the habits of the individual driver are as it relates to locking the car or unlocking the car, leaving things inside the car that are visible overnight. We have people that in the law enforcement industry, we often sort of chuckle and say, somebody comes up on a Saturday morning shocked to the police station and says, my car was stolen last night, or something from my car is missing. And first question that a police officer will ask is, did you lock it? Oh, no, I didn't lock it. I left it unlocked because that's it. We've been doing things for the past 30 years around here. We've never seen any crime take place. Well, guess what? Criminals are going to eventually go there and start feeling the car out to make sure that the doors are unlocked and that, easy access to the vehicle. So.
Is it a good idea, Doctor, one final question, that say for a residential scenario like you're describing out there, a good idea to get one of those video cameras for outside, like maybe one of the Rings or maybe a perimeter camera? Would that help law enforcement in the investigation?
Yeah, it does help, but I, sarcastically often say that it gives us a really good picture of the bad guy that stole your car, and that's about it, So you can show it to your friends and how your car was stolen. But in reality, because there's little facial recognition programming, unless you actually recognize the suspect, law enforcement can only use that in a limited capacity, and so it makes a nice video to share your insurance to get reimbursed, but that's about it.
Okay, good thanks. Okay, Doctor, thank you very much, sir, for joining me on a program. Very, very interesting. Dr. Alex Del Carmen, Associate Dean and Professor at School of Criminology, Criminal Justice, Public Administration at Tarleton State University, member of the A&M University system. And, Doctor, one more time, where can drivers find you? Where can they reach out to you?
Sure, they can find us at Tarleton, Tarleton.edu on our website. Just click under Criminology, and you'll be able to link up with us. And thanks for having me again. I always enjoy our conversation.
Outstanding. We'll do it again. Thank you, sir.